Emil Smith-Rowe bursting into the box, and that is a wonderful finish from Emil Smith-Rowe. It's his first goal in a Fulham shirt, certainly at Premier League level. It's the first of many, and look at the smile on his face. That's a quality goal from a quality player.
Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Fulham. We are all here today to discuss the Ipswich game, a slightly disappointing 1-1 draw with Ipswich, even though we did say that the team would come out and give us a decent run for our money. I think we all expected to come away from this game with all 3 points. Unfortunately, not to be. Here to talk it all through, we have Elton. How are we going tonight?
I'm very well, thank you very much. It was a bit disappointing. Thought we could have done a lot better. I've heard many people say that we should be very satisfied with the Premier League point on the road, but it really feels like we dropped 2.
Yeah, definitely. Also joining us, we have Sam. How are we going, Sammy?
It's been cyclone conditions here in Melbourne, which is something that you probably didn't get on the news. So Sam hasn't slept in 3 days. I'm at peak rage, so I'm really excited to be here, get into all the nuts and crannies, and let's roll. Let's rock.
Lovely, Sammy. And a scantily clad Skibby. How are we going today, Skibby?
Cold and I guess a little bit vulnerable, I think is the word. But yeah, I'm a man of my word, so here I am, just in pants, so great time. Anyway, so apologies if I offend anyone, and if I've made your day, then I've made your day, so I'll take it. But other than that, I mean, the result is what it is. I think we expected it. Hard fought. I'm not surprised, so hey, what can you do?
Yeah, look, it's a rough couple of days for you, Skibby. You had to sleep in a field. You've watched Fulham draw with Ipswich away from home, and now you're sitting doing a podcast in your pants because Jay Stansfield went to Birmingham. So it's been an eventful few days. But guys, as we always do, let's just start by reminding everyone to join the That's So Craven Discord. You can find the links in our Twitter bio. A really good place, even though the transfer window is closed now. It's still a great place where like-minded Fulham fans get together, talk about all things Fulham. There's still some transfer news floating around in there at the moment, and lots of discussions about the squad, the results, how things are going at Fulham. So please do join up. Also, you can get all the news from cravenpod.com, a place where we publish articles very regularly. We just did our roundup of the transfer window, which you can find there. And we have match previews, match reviews. We'll be also digging into the international break over the next couple of weeks while Fulham are away. But guys, let's talk about the game itself. Like we've sort of all said, a slightly disappointing result, really. You kind of expect against newly promoted sides to be hoping at least to take maximum points off them. Admittedly, a little harder away from home, but it wasn't a great performance either. And Skibby, I'll throw to you first. We talked about it in the preview, the fact that it's tough to come up against newly promoted teams because especially in Ipswich's case, they, you could say their season actually started against Fulham, seeing as they had to start up against Man City and Liverpool, who are proving now that they are miles ahead of the chasing pack. 2 very, very strong teams, and they finally came up against a team where they have the potential to take points at home. It was always going to be a tough game, and it really turned out to be that kind of game as well.
Yeah, exactly. They came out of the blocks. They pressed Fulham. They knew where our weaknesses were. And do you know what? I didn't actually expect any less from a side like Ipswich, who have a manager like McKenna. They have a very good manager. Yeah. He was linked to the vacant position at Chelsea. I think he even turned them down, if I'm not mistaken, and signed a long-term deal at Ipswich. So, I mean, that was great for them. That was almost a signing for Ipswich at the beginning of the window, just to keep the manager. And I mean, we know how important that is, especially when you find a formula and it works. And they were relentless. Their front 4 were just all over. They knew that Diop and Bassi would want to try and play it out. They knew they weren't that comfortable. And I think they even reap rewards from that press, which, from the Delap goal. So, not shocked. I'm impressed by Ipswich, if I'm honest, and I think if they can keep that kind of momentum for 38 games and that intensity, they'll keep the confidence and just they will probably not even be within, they'll probably be within the shout of relegation zone, but be much more comfortable than a lot of the sides like Everton, even sort of, definitely sort of Southampton, I think. But they came out. They had these players such as Amari Hutchinson and Delap, who I think in the preview pod I said not particularly Premier League proven, but obviously done very well in the Championship, and now they've got to step up, and they stepped up against us, and yeah, fair play to them.
Yeah, Dad, I'll throw it to you actually, because I was going to say McKenna has obviously done a great job with Ipswich, and like Skibby touched on, they seem to really understand where Fulham's weaknesses are and pressed us really hard from the start. Just, I guess, throwing to you for your little recap of the game as well, but how important do you think it was that Ipswich seemed to have done their homework on Fulham and really exploited our weaknesses?
Well, look, as Skibby said, he's a quality manager, and he absolutely was. It's probably fairly. It's a fairly open secret where our problems are, because all of last year, at least, if not more, the good teams or the smart teams gave us a lot of problems when they pressed us every single time. And I think we were more organised last year. Certainly, with Castagna at the back, he's probably more press resistant. Perhaps Tosin a little bit more confident playing out at the back. So I think there's been a couple of changes. Whilst we've obviously got Anderson in, he's not part of proceedings yet, and that back four are definitely vulnerable. And I thought that Ipswich did it really, really well. We were not terrible, but I think great credit to them, because I think they actually forced us into a lot of errors, and we looked really shaky from time to time at the back. Not so much defending, but every time we tried to play out from the back, we looked pretty ropey. Actually, I thought Hutchinson was really good. Actually, I thought he did a really good job. I thought he, for my money, he got the better of Robinson on the day, and I thought he gave him a really good game, if not slightly. Yeah, probably. I'd say on balance, probably got the better of him. I did make that comment on X, and I saw a number of USA fans, which I assume are USA fans, came out pretty hard against me, but because I made the comment that Robinson doesn't have any decent competition, and he's pretty lucky that he doesn't, because that wasn't great.
Sammy, you watched this game through the middle of a rave, I believe. Good effort. I think that's about the only way that you could have stayed awake to watch this game. Your thoughts on Fulham's overall performance in this one?
Well, it was quite funny actually, because I was at a house party, and much to the chagrin of Paris, because she was very, very upset with me trying to watch like the game while it was happening, and then also defending my choices to various people asking me while I was watching a Fulham game, particularly Fulham versus Ipswich. A lot of people there were quite confused by that, as is the Australian understanding of Premier League. Sorry, what was the original question? I've already forgot.
Did you enjoy your house party? That was the real question.
Yeah, it was all right. It was fun. I've been recovering ever since. No, but okay. I do want to highlight a couple of points though. I mean, because there's going to be a lot of negative things that we're probably going to say today about the overall performance. I don't think Robinson played horrifically. I still think he's genuinely one of our strongest players at the minute. And I mean, obviously he created an assist. I know that's kind of up for debate whether that was him or Muniz, but he's still getting himself into positions even under a extreme amount of pressing. I really, really want to highlight Sasa Lukic, because I really don't want it to get lost in the shuffle, but I thought Sasa Lukic actually played really, really well. And at the moment, I actually think we're in a bit of a weird period, because I think we've been prioritizing who fits in best with Pereira in centre mid. But honestly, from that game in particular, and just saw how lazy and just not well suited Pereira was. I want Silva to reestablish who works best with Sasa Lukic, because it's I I don't like I actually thought it was an improvement when Sander Berge came on, but it was weird. I felt that it really wasn't the right lineup selected. Even when I was a bit pissed, I could still kind of tell that it just didn't feel right. And it was a weird game. It was a weird game.
It's the Pereira conundrum is a little interesting because I did think that when he was moved further forward when
It's
Smith
better.
Rowe came off, he did look better. He actually pressed quite hard, which you didn't really see. I think he's still just adapting to that position at the moment, and I think there's definitely potential there because when he's got the ball at feet, he's very progressive. It wasn't his best day by any means, and it's going to be hard to try and defend him off the back of this performance as a singular performance. But I think he's shown enough when he does sit deep, and I've always liked it when he drops deeper to collect the ball when he was playing more advanced. I think we just need to work out how, and there's a really good thread from Cottage Tactico on Twitter as well about how without Polina there, we're just leaving gaps open because Lukic now has to sort of fill the void, and he's maybe approaching players and trying to make tackles that he shouldn't be making, and instead should actually be shielding the space. And that's kind of where the goal came from on the weekend, where Lukic goes to, I think it was Smodic who plays the ball inside. Might not have been actually. I think it was though. To Delap, and Delap's in acres of room, and that's because Lukic has gone across to close him down and make that tackle, which is the kind of tackle Polina would have previously been making. And because Pereira is always going to be slightly more advanced, there's going to be those gaps there. So it's just going to take some time, I think, on the training ground. And I'm not sure if Pereira has been selected for international duty. I know Lukic has, but
No.
There's a lot of work, I think, needed in finding the correct positions for some of those players. And having Pereira and Smith Rowe not on international duty will mean that they're actually able to work together and maybe understand their movement on the pitch a little bit more. I think it would have been handy to have Lukic there, but maybe Harrison Reed can fill that void for training purposes at least. But look, it wasn't Pereira's greatest performance. Skibby, I know it probably feels like a bit of a turnaround. Last year we were questioning Lukic a lot and wondering if he fits into this squad at all, and talking about him maybe being sold on because it's just not working. This season so far, I'd argue he's been our best player, maybe outside of Anthony Robinson.
Yeah.
How do you feel this is working so far? Because Lukic is obviously looking a completely different player from last season, but now we're having the issue with Pereira sitting next to him, maybe not quite working yet. How do you see this one turning around, and what do you think Silva needs to do?
It's an interesting one because I think when we looked at Lukic, and I mean, if you've been listening to the pod, you know that I wasn't particularly friendly towards Lukic last season, to put it bluntly. So, I mean, Lukic with Polina didn't work, and that was the system. You couldn't drop Polina. Lukic got lost in that sort of tactical formation, and it just wasn't playing to his strengths. And now I feel like it's completely flipped. So we've lost Polina. We've lost that warrior who 9 times out of 10, if he sees the ball and he's chasing someone down, he's going to get that ball. Therefore, Lukic is kind of like, okay, where do I fit? What do I do in this system? Like, he would just pick up the ball every now and then and just try and sort of play it off. But now, without Polina, the need for sort of defensive coverage across the midfield has now got to be shared. There is no warrior, there is no person solely who's basically going to make that tackle. Therefore, I think now, with a more balanced sort of central pivot, as it were, this fits Lukic much better. But now, by seeing Lukic sort of flourish, we're now seeing a Pereira who hasn't played in the number 8 for Fulham in a Marco system before, until very, very recently, until Smith Rowe came in. Therefore, I think he's still adjusting, and now he is the Lukic. He is the one who's sort of saying, wait, what do I do in this formation? I have no idea what my role is and what you're expecting of me. I mean, he probably knows mentally, but to actually put that into practice, he's now finding that quite difficult. And you touched upon the goal for Delap. I saw people sort of slandering Andreas, saying, why didn't he track Delap? Why didn't he, get a tackle in, blah, blah, blah. Show me a number 8 in the world who would chase down a player and throw their body in like a central defensive midfielder, like Paulinho would have done. It's just not him. It's just not what you expect. You would just expect a central defensive mid in that situation to be between Delap and the defence. Yes, Lukic wasn't there. I don't blame Lukic to say he should be in that position, but I just feel like a more well-drilled midfield knows when Lukic has moved forward, therefore I need to be back. That telepathy will come, but it's not going to come within sort of 3 days, or 3 games rather, into a season when they've only just started working on the system. Sort of Sanderberger, when he comes in, he's going to be new to the system, just as much as Andreas is new to this system because he's normally further up the field. So he's got to adjust. It's going to take time. I think if Marco wanted a number 8 who was going to be a bit more competitive and a bit more defensive, he would have said that. And I think we know that Marco isn't the most sentimental of managers. I think he would have identified a number 8 that he wanted if Andreas was not the one. If Smith Rowe was coming in to be number 10 and Andreas had no position in this squad, he would have said so, and he would have taken him aside and said, look, you're going to be second fiddle, you're going to be this. You can either leave or stick around. But the fact that he's getting the games in that number 8 position says to me that Marco knows he can do the job that he wants him to do, but it's just going to take time. But therefore, I think that's what Marco is going to do, if I'm honest. I think he's going to start looking at probably Sanderberger and Andreas, but potentially be more fluid in his selections. So if they're going to be a position where we're going to have a lot of the ball, not so much press, Pereira is fantastic. If we're going to be under the cosh, potentially Lukic is going to be the one that comes in with Sanderberger. But Sanderberger's been the one that's been outlined by Marco to say he is the new number 6 of this team, and that's what we're probably going to see going forward. But I think for me it's going to be time, but how much time do you give them is the next question. That I do not know.
Well, I'm not sure who said it, but I think it might have been you, Sam, who said we're in a kind of a weird place at the moment. And taking nothing away from Lukic, he's had a couple of really good games, and I'm really happy for him, and I'm happy for the team and the squad. But we've played Leicester and we've played Ipswich. They're far from the toughest challenges we're going to face. And he's done well, but honestly, top half of the table, I think our current midfield gets torn apart. And we've got to fix this problem really quickly, which, once again, frustrates the life out of me as to why we don't do business earlier in the summer. If we've got such a precise way of playing, as every manager does, but Marco's a stickler, and he absolutely, he brings in 2 signings, and we're yet to see them because he wants to spend time bedding them in, and all the while, matches are passing us by. A couple of games that we should definitely have taken 3 points from. Go begging. It's frustrating to me. But back to Lukic, I still don't think he's the answer. He's performing better. He's actually performing more confidently, but I just don't see him being the man against better sides. It's an awkward one. Sanderberger can't get match ready quick enough as far as I'm concerned, and I'm not sure what the practical problem with Anderson is entering this team, breaking through to the starting lineup, because he's got the quality, he's done the pre-season work, he's played a game, albeit against a weak opposition in the Carabao Cup, but he's ready to go, and we need him. And I know Silva is very insistent on going through his process of essentially onboarding a player, but we've got problems to solve, and I don't think we can waste any time getting down to it.
I don't really understand the vetting process. I can kind of understand what he's
Not
doing
vetting.
with.
It's not vetting. It's just like he's insistent that they understand the system and can almost prove it in training before they get a start.
Which I do kind of get, and I understand why he's doing what he's doing with Pereira, because if you think of like what he's done with Lukic, he's kind of transformed Lukic into being a completely different player that's working for him now. And
I
Andreas
think that's an
is
overstatement. I reckon it's an overstatement.
well, in any case, I think Andreas Pereira is a better player, so I think he's actually potentially more moldable than Lukic is. So if you can do it with Lukic, you can do it with Andreas. But I don't understand why Anderson isn't getting a look in, because it's not even a discussion. He is the best centre back that we have.
It's a principle thing, I'm sure, with
I,
Marco. It's like
I don't
know,
think it's principle. I think it's you bring a player into a well drilled system that Marco has been drilling into these guys for years now. Bassi has had a full year of it. Tete and Robinson have had it for the last 3-4 years that Silva's been at the club. It's all about understanding, and it reminds me of an old story of the Arsenal backline, and I think it was I can't remember the manager who did it, but he tied all 4 defenders together with a piece of rope and said, you guys need to understand where you're all moving at all times and understand and move as a group. And I think if you throw one person in there, and the Premier League being the way it is, you can't afford to drop that many points throughout the season. Fulham are likely to aim for about 50 points, and you need 40 to be safe. So you drop points like we did in this game, you actually put yourself at a risk of being relegated. So I totally understand that you don't want to bring someone in until you are certain that they actually fit into your system and that they understand your system. And Colm, thank you on the live stream. That's George Graham was the manager at Arsenal who tied the defenders together with a piece of rope. So I'm okay with that. And also to your point of us doing business late in the window, to be fair, it turned out we'd been talking to Sander Berger for 3 weeks before we actually managed to sign him. So we started the conversations about getting him signed at the start of August. And we obviously had a lot of issues with Fluminense when we were trying to sign Andre, who were really stringing us along and pissing about, basically. So I think there's a grain of salt to be had with that argument, because I think we actually tried this window to get our business done in time. We had ESR with us in Portugal at the start of August, and well,
no, I'm not
how
buying
can
it.
you
I'm
not
not buying
buy
that,
it?
Jack.
I
No, Jack,
feel me.
Jack, you've forgotten how long we went, how many weeks we went without any activity or any success at all.
But
Start of
there
the window.
was activity. We just don't hear about it because Fulham
Yeah.
keep it very close to their chest.
Yeah.
So
Well, we
there's
don't-
stuff going on, and we signed players a couple of days after every other club signed them, but we were working behind the scenes to make signings, and we actually did make more signings this year before the deadline day. Because we didn't have to make signings on deadline day this time round. I think it's being unfair to say that we did all our business late this year, because we just didn't. The business that we did, we actually did in fair time. But Marco likes to take his time betting players into the system. So it is a
And with that
double-edged
in
sword
mind-
where
with that
but
in mind,
you can't get players signed because of the Euros as well. You can't have players signed in mid July this year. It was never going to happen. So I think we did well to get the players in that we did, because players like was Anderson, he played at the Euros, didn't he?
Denmark.
Yeah, Sander Berger didn't, but again, we were talking to him at the start of August. So
Yeah. And then what's the
these are
timeline
players.
with that? What happened at the beginning of August? We pulled out of the Fluminense deal. And I think what's important to see here is the names that were coming out of the woodwork around that time. And clearly there was a change in the way that we were going to play. Because at that point we had Andre, we tabled a bid. He was the one we were going to get. And I think with Andre, we were going to probably get Diego Carlos for the Premier League experience. Not probably the best at passing out, but, if Andre's coming deep to get the ball, help him out, and Brazilian international teammate, potentially. So there was a mode there of this is what we're going to do going forward. But as soon as the Fluminense deal doesn't come about, then we start looking at McTominay. We start looking at Sanderberg. We start looking at, okay, maybe Diogo Carlos is not the one that will fit with these players. Therefore, you've now got to change your centre back options, and that's why Anderson then comes into the frame of, okay, well, if we're going to have Sanderberger or McTominay, potentially not the best on the ball, a bit progressive passing, but they are warriors. Therefore, we need someone with a bit more technical ability at the back. That's when Anderson comes into the frame. So I think, yeah, it's quite easy to say that Marco has his vision of the way that he wants to play, but I do think there are the finer details which as soon as targets become available, not available, they've got to be tweaked. And I could not see a McTominay with Diego Carlos situation, if that makes sense. That's where Anderson has to come in, and I think that it's those finer details which potentially get overlooked in that sort of situation.
No, I'm not overlooking them at all. I'm just highlighting the importance of not being vulnerable or weak for possibly the first 4 games, where that actually costs you serious points. Where if you're prepared at the start of the season, you you actually have the opportunity to come out and perhaps nick some points off teams who will not let you have any points later in the season. And it just seems to take us some time to get going because
It is.
we don't. You go.
I was just gonna say, look, we have to look at this as well from a wider perspective. It's always going to be a lot more difficult for us to sign players than say your Arsenals or even your Newcastles now, just because we have to make a bit more of a compelling case than the average club, because we have to really find players that maybe they potentially want more money. In the case, I think Anderson's probably the best example of that. We probably had that. Give him a more handsome wage in comparison to Crystal Palace. I don't know the ins and outs of the Berg deal, but I imagine there's probably similar ramifications with that as well. It's always going to be a little bit more complex and a little bit more savvy than just, do you want to come play at Fulham? Think of how many players go to Chelsea at the moment, literally just off the back of the fact that it's Chelsea and they might get an opportunity to play top level Chelsea. We just don't have that. So it's always going to, every deal that we do is always going to be massively drawn out and a lot more laborious than those top clubs. So it's hard to compare, in my opinion.
Yeah. And look, I think if you qualify for Europe as well, it's much easier to convince players to come and play for you. And without that draw card, you're always going to be sitting behind a few different teams when you're chasing those similar level players. So, and look, it wasn't the easiest window, I'd say. There's a lot of clubs spending big money. There's Saudi money picking up players who really should be targeted by Fulham. Then we just can't compete with the money they're able to offer. And look, we're still talking about the Ipswich game at the moment, but we will actually focus on the transfers at some point. But I think it was a tricky window to actually get through, and we did quite well in the end. Let's revert back to the game again, just so we can actually wrap it all up. But let's talk about the goal. And look, it's Anthony Robinson, who over the last couple of years, we've always complained that he doesn't get enough assists, and he's got 2 so far this season already in 3 games. He is, set away really nicely by Iwobi, as they do quite well on the overlap. Puts the ball into the box. Muniz makes a good run, is probably unfortunate not to get a touch on it, and in a way fortunate as well. Adama in the right place at the back post to finish. Sammy, I will throw to you on this. Adama is a player in the mold of players that I'm pretty sure you love. He's got very big muscles and he's fast. He's like a superhero. How good has he been, though, so far this season? Because we didn't see much of him last season, only off the bench. But Marco's sticking with him so far. Are you liking what you're seeing from Adama, or do you think Reece Nelson as a loan signing is possibly going to challenge him for that role?
I do not care about Reece Nelson at all. No, Adama's great. Adama's great. And honestly, I like this is actually a really good example of changing your priorities and what Silva should be doing. Because obviously I'm going to care way more about Adama than Reece Nelson. He looks like a superhero. It's amazing. And he's the weirdest looking Premier League player that's ever existed. Of course, I'm going to be obsessed with the guy. But genuinely, like it's really nice to see players like him who have had just a really really rough time over like the past couple of years, just not really being able to like find their footing, actually get like some decent traction. It seems like we're really molding ourselves for Traore, which is really really good to see. And it's just genuinely really nice to see him like confident and actually in the squad and just genuinely providing and actually celebrating goals with everybody else. There was a period where it did kind of feel like he was separate from everything, and now he actually feels like one of us. And also as well, I do just want to hark back to Robinson again, because for my money, I reckon top 3, top 5 left backs in the Prem at the moment. I think he's actually been fantastic. Even if he did have like not necessarily the best game on the weekend, I think this is probably the season where I've been the most impressed with him. He really looks a cut above everything that I've ever seen him do. I can't see Cesc getting like a look, and especially if Silva wants to play him at left back. And yeah, I'm just really enjoying what Robinson's doing at the minute.
It's high praise for Hutchinson, isn't it?
Yeah, no, genuinely though.
Hutchinson did have a good game. I think you're maybe overdoing how good a game Hutchinson had. I don't think he had Robinson on toast, because he didn't really affect the game that much. I don't think they created a huge number of chances, but Robinson did look a bit shaky against him a few times. But either way, I think Robinson has been having a great season so far. It's hard to argue that. And I'd agree. You know, I genuinely don't think we'll see Anthony Robinson with us next season, because I'm sure there's going to be big teams coming in for him because of, I guess, just athletically what he can give to you. That pace down the wing. Imagine you have that in a team like Man United, who were linked with him at the end of the window. I think he would do wonders there. If you replace Luke Shaw with Anthony Robinson, all of a sudden they get some vigor down the left. That would be very dangerous in a really good team. And the fact that he's started to add that final ball to his game as well makes him incredibly dangerous. And let's be honest, most of our attacking play comes from down that left flank.
100%.
Might not always be Robinson getting the assists or putting the ball in the box, but just the carnage they cause by being able to break so quickly down the left and knowing where each other make runs constantly. It is definitely something that we have over other teams, and to have a player of that quality with us is, I'm not putting him on the same level as Palhinha, but it definitely is something that a lot of clubs around us don't have. Or if they do have it, you look at a club like Palace who have an Eze who can change a game, and Robinson is a bit of a game changer. But the goal, and Dad, I'll throw to you on Traore as well. Your thoughts on him being our potential right wing starter for the rest of the season?
Well, I don't know much about Nelson, to be honest. I couldn't be happier for Adama. I think he's having a really good start. He everything that we kind of were concerned about, I think he's sort of found an answer for. I think he's not just an impact sub. He is definitely more than that. I know there's a big debate about whether he could be better used as an impact sub when he comes on late and teams are tired, and maybe his value is even greater then. But he's crossing. He stood one up really, really well. His shooting is very high class. He's got a great left and right foot, and you know he does tend to hang on to the ball a little bit too long and kind of not really know when to release it, and he just enjoys running and the thrill of actually beating a couple of men, and then he'll try and beat a third, and then it goes to shit. But fair play to the guy. I mean, he's had that assist across to ESR, which was beautiful to watch. Thought he had a really, really good game, and I'm really happy for the guy because, as Sam said, I think he's had a tough few years, really, and obviously he's just quietly got about his business, and I'm really happy to see that Marco's backing him. Like for me right now, Harry Wilson does not start before Adama. Right?
Absolutely.
Definitely not. I personally am still on the case for Iwobi being on the right hand side. I don't like Iwobi
Mm,
on the left. Never
mm.
have. And I don't know if Nelson can genuinely play on the left. Well, educate me, can he?
Yes.
I've heard he can play on either. If he can genuinely play on either, wouldn't it be great to have Iwobi Iwobi and Adama fighting it out for who starts and tactically, because they're so different, and yet um, both good players that I'd like to see in my starting lineup.
Yeah. I think we're going to see a lot more fluidity up top. The fact that we've got Nelson who can play on both wings, Smith Rowe can play centrally and on the left, Iwobi can play across all three. Adama, we saw switch to the left late on against Ipswich as well when Harry Wilson came on. I think we're going to see a lot more rotation through all those positions. And when those guys are all on the field together as well, I'm already seeing um, Smith Rowe float out to the left. I saw when Pereira moved into the 10, he floated out and ended up on the right wing a few times as well. And Wilson came central. So there's a lot more fluidity, I'd say, to that front line now. We saw Willian often just stick on the left and Wilson just stick on the right, and that was sort of the way it was. But I think we now have a squad where we've got the ability to mix things up a little bit. Skibby, do you think Reece Nelson has a sniff at the moment, or is he more of a squad player?
I think it'll take time. But I mean, if he can perform what I've seen from him, then I don't see why not. I mean, interestingly, I think Adama, if you look at the stats, he has, I think, one less most dribbles completed in the league. I think Doku is on 12 and he was on 11. So he's been one of the most progressive and aggressive wingers in the league so far. And I don't think that can be sort of sniffed at. Elton was bang on the money. He does too much sometimes. Sometimes I just want him to hand it off to Pereira. I know he messes up a few passes recently, but knock it and run, mate. They'll find you. I mean, and I think that will come. But I think Nelson for me is probably going to be more after that Iwobi spot. I do think Iwobi's probably going to have that I'm a permanent player, you're just a loanee kind of hold on him. So I think Marco will prefer his sort of more contracted players rather than loanees. But for me, the way that the season has started, I think that left wing is potentially up for grabs. I think Adama has definitely been very, very good on that right hand side. That it would be very unfair to drop him just because we think he's an impact sub. But if Nelson can play like I said, I could definitely see him coming in for Iwobi for certain games, and that would be that kind of light under Iwobi to sort of think, okay, my place is now under threat. I've got to step up, and I think that would be a great thing to have for Marco, where people are going to start missing out because we've got a very, very stacked squad, and players are going to have to up their game, and that can only reap rewards for in my eyes, especially if a loanee's coming in and kicking you out of the team.
Here's a hot tip. Anderson sitting up in the cottage with his Peaky Blinders cap on, and I reckon he was thinking to himself, "Geez, I could put a couple of balls ahead of Adama." And imagine Anderson.
I was thinking that as well.
Unleashing really well placed balls for Adama to run onto.
Well, I mean,
I
we
know we
saw
love
it
to
even
play out of the back,
for
but,
Stansfield in the cup game. He put a ball, and Stansfield is fast, but he's not Adama fast. And you saw that ball. I can't remember who it was who played the ball through for him, but it was Muniz hit the ball first time for Adama to run onto, and it seemed like he massively overhit it, but the keeper didn't think he was going to win, even though I think the ball ended up on the corner of the box, and the keeper still didn't think he was going to win a sort of 10-yard foot race against Adama's 30 yards. So I agree, having Anderson being able to play that ball over the top for him, it'll just spread the game completely and open up spaces for us. So I'm looking forward to that, and I think it is an interesting point that you make as well, saying there's players who are going to be looking over their shoulders. I think Sander Berger's going to have Pereira and Lukic looking over their shoulders. Anderson will now have, and Cuenca as well, will have Diop and Bassi looking over their shoulders. The fact we got Reece Nelson in means that there's more competition on the wings. The only person really who's not looking over his shoulder at the moment, realistically, is Muniz, because I think even if he fails to score, he's still a better option than Jimenez. And Bernd Leno as well, with Bender behind him, realistically.
I think ESR's, if he can get fit and get closer to 90 minutes, I think he's looking pretty safe.
Yeah, of course. And I think Robinson as well is very safe. And obviously Tete and Castagna are, I'd say, at each other's throats. They're not actually at each other's throats, but they're competing very closely for one position. And it's a bit of a coin toss for me who you pick most weeks. Let's wrap the game up here and just quickly go through some of the stats. Fulham with 51% possession to Ipswich's 49. Fulham's 9 shots to Ipswich's 11. Both teams are 4 on target. Only 17 passes difference between the two teams. Fulham 418, Ipswich 401. Ipswich had 8 corners to Fulham 6, and both teams had 15 fouls. When you look at the stats there, 1-1 really does seem like a fair result. Both teams putting some pressure on the goal, but without making any real impact. And look, is a couple of very good goals, to be honest. Delap's goal was really well taken. You know, the fact that Leno gets a full hand to it and can't keep it out just shows how well he hit that ball. And Adama's was never going to be stopped coming in the back post there. So, look, feel fractionally disappointed. Its points dropped for sure, but at the same time, you kind of feel like Ipswich actually played well and deserved a point. So, I think we can move on from that, move into what is probably a well-timed international break with West Ham at the Cottage afterwards. So let's talk about the transfers, guys. And we put out an article today rating all the transfers out of 10. Skibby, I'll throw to you first. Sander Berger, obviously, we were chasing Andre for the whole window. That fell through. We ended up with Sander Berger, who we've been chasing for a while, to be fair. He's a player that Silva has admired for a couple of years now. Are you happy with this transfer?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when he first came onto the scene in English football, I think at Sheffield United, I thought he was very good. He played in the Championship, got promoted, and I thought they've got a very good player. Yeah, it's just one of those where for me, he's always been kind of that really hard to fit. I never saw him personally as a Palhinha replacement. I saw him more of that kind of Lukic number 8, tidy on the ball, got that physicality, can crash the box, got goals in him, I think. So it'd be interesting to see the dynamic that Marco has planned for him. That he's going to be hanging back a little bit more, potentially not being that goal threat, potentially maybe pop up with the goals like Palhinha did. Brighton comes to mind if he's just lurking on the edge of the box and he can hit them. We've seen that before. I think he even scored against us, didn't he, for Burnley? But it's just one of those players where I wouldn't even dwell on the fact that he's been relegated twice. I think it's just irrelevant. It's a really stupid argument that people are making. I think, especially when you look at the players that were around him in both Burnley and Sheffield United, like he didn't stand a chance. So I'm not going to blame him for it, but was on the radar for Man United, to come in and do a job for them. So I think he's a shrewd signing for us. It's hard to say whether I would have preferred another midfielder, but I think for us, in the stature that we needed that physicality. We needed that kind of warrior who can be a bit of a goal threat from corners and set pieces. He's 6'5". He's a big lad. I think he's just definitely that kind of muscle that we need in a team of sort of Smith Rowe's, Pereiras, all quite lightweight players. So I think he's a perfect fit for us, really, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Sammy, same question?
It's a bit like when Mark Ruffalo started playing the Hulk. It's not what I expected, but it just fits really, really well. I really like I really like what he's bringing. It makes sense with the way in which he's going. I truly could not give a toss about Andre anymore. He's dicked us around too long, so my interest in Andre has just completely gone out the window. I'm all for Sanderberg and whoever kind of comes in alongside him. I'd really want to see a Berge Lukic partnership and see what that can bring. I think that's got fertile ground that I want to see explored.
Dad, to you as well. Happy with Berger?
Very, very. I really like him. If I had my way, I'd have 11 ball playing footballers who are all super skillful and can knock the ball around and keep it off any opposition all afternoon. Um, so,
So Man
but
City.
obviously, yeah, pretty much. So I mean, it is football. Why wouldn't you want one of those? Um, I I was very excited about the idea of Andre because I just like the look of him, and a little bit of Brazilian and more Brazilian and Latin finesse. Well, I can't get enough of that. But it will be interesting to see who. Well, firstly, I'm certain that Sander Berger is going to be the main guy in defensive midfield. Personally, I'm hoping that um, that Pereira finds a way to match up with him, because I think if we can make that work, it would be really exciting. I, like I said before, I'm happy that Lukic is earning his wages at the moment. Um, I I just don't really think. I still don't think he's the guy.
Yeah. Look, I think you can't definitively say if he is or isn't the guy yet. We're 3 games in, and he's shown a lot more so far, but um, maybe hasn't been fully tested quite yet. I like the physicality that we get from someone like Sanderberger, where the fact he's 6'4", I think he looks composed on the ball, and um, I think we miss that when we've lost Polina, and so having someone able to come in and in a way fill that void is going to be really helpful for us, because realistically, the players you've got in the middle, Lukic, who his tackling's not bad, but he's not the biggest guy in the world. Harrison Reed is just like a yappy little dog running around after players, and that's a different kind of physicality in the middle. Andreas Pereira is never going to be a physical, deep lying playmaker. So to be able to actually have someone who has that build and ability is definitely a massive positive. So I'm happy with the signing. Like we've all said, I think we'd have quite enjoyed to have Andre, purely for the fact that he is going to be Brazil's number 6 going forward. Let's be honest, he's got a lot of talent, but we know Silva likes players with Premier League experience. How long will Andre take to get up to speed in the Premier League? It might be 6 months, but that 6 months could be quite vital if you're actually searching for European positions. Sander Berger, we know, has played a couple of seasons of Premier League football, has the ability to do well in the Premier League, and will fit in with this squad really nicely. So I'm happy with that signing for sure. It's a good signing by Fulham, I think. Joachim Anderson as well, in the same stead. I think Premier League proven, Fulham proven as well. His leadership qualities, long ball ability. He's tall, so we've got some aerial ability there now as well. Sam, I'll throw to you first. Happy with Anderson re-signing for Fulham?
He's just fucking gorgeous, man, and it's just a great signing. I just love him. Just love him. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. Just start him. Just start him already, so I can just go full throttle into just being obsessed with the guy again.
Just cut it there. We'll clip that. Dad?
Yeah, I loved Anderson playing for us, and as I said before a couple of times, I measured my respect for the guy as to how much I hated playing against him every time I saw him. I cannot wait for him to become a fixture. I'm excited about the possibilities. I don't know where it's going to land. It may end up. I actually believe that Diop, as long as Diop, he wasn't doing badly, but as long as Diop is actually in the side, he's actually making Kenny look like he may or may not belong. I reckon you put Anderson in there, and Kenny's he's Harold-eyed it in as a really good fit in at right back. But as much as I love Bassi, and there's a lot to love with Bassi. Um, I'm excited to see how Cuenca goes because I
Yeah.
think he could be breaking through quicker than we think,
Mm.
and that we could have a back line for the ages here.
Well, off the back of that, Skibby, I'll throw to you. You can give us your thoughts on Anderson as well, but I know you are a big fan of Cuenca. Um, do you think he's? I mean, firstly, rate the signing because we've seen little of him so far, but what we have seen has been actually quite impressive. And Silva has come out a few times and said, "Keep an eye on Cuenca this season because he's a talent."
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it was a completely unknown signing. It just
Mm,
came out of absolutely nowhere. I think it was about 6 million to take Villarreal's starting centre back, which again is pretty unheard of that you're getting a
mm,
starting centre back in La Liga for such a cheap amount. And then when you started to sort of take a look under the hood, you realised he is a ball playing centre back, which, and he's left footed. That profile, you speak to Kish at Cottage Tactico, that profile doesn't really come across very often. It's
Mm.
almost like, pulling a shiny in a stack of Pokemon cards kind of
Hmm.
thing. But it's unbelievable to sort of to think that, he's been a bit of a hidden, not, I think it's too early to say a hidden gem, but a player of that ability and that caliber to sort of come to Fulham completely under the radar is quite exciting. And then the small things that we have seen from him, he's very composed. I think he's going to take a bit of time just to get up to speed with the way that the ball moves in English football. That it is pretty quick. But you look back onto the Ipswich game at the weekend, and we were under the cosh. We were really under pressure. But as soon as you bring Anderson and Cuenca into the picture, you're suddenly finding gaps and you're picking out Pereira. He doesn't have to defend as much. He doesn't have to come as deep as he needs to be. If you take out that flat four in front of you,
Yeah,
if you take out them in the game
yeah,
and then Pereira gets on the turn, they're in a
yeah,
world of hurt.
yeah.
And I think for me, I love Bassi, don't get me wrong, and I think he's done very well for us. But when you're making that step from mid-table mediocrity to Europe, people have to be sacrificed for the good of the team. And for me, I think Cuenca could be that unsung hero that comes in to partner Anderson. And I know we didn't touch upon Anderson, but Anderson for me is phenomenal. Don't fall in love with a lone player unless you know he's going to come back 4 years later. That's the rule now.
Mm.
But I think I even tweeted in 2021 that I hated watching Anderson was like looking at your ex on social media and seeing they're thriving in life. It was awful.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
he's back now, and I think him and Cuenca could be a partnership which could grow into something very special. And I feel for Bassi. I think he's a fantastic athlete. But could he's still young? Could he learn under in Cuenca and Anderson in the same squad? Could he learn to sort of pick up the ball on the turn and find some space? Potentially. Diop's a lost cause, but that's another thing. But yeah, I think when we come across those the high press that we found at the weekend, that could definitely be an out and something which we'd have to look into.
yeah. Dad, excited to see more of Cuenca, and do you think Bassi is maybe more at risk than we realise? Obviously, like we've said, Diop is, it's a waiting game for Diop. But do you think maybe Bassi on the sly is a little bit worried that he's going to be losing his spot?
Oh, I think it's a very public concern. I think it's obvious, and everyone can see it from very very small moments. But the manager's actually bringing everyone's attention to it and telling everyone that he's going to surprise people. Well, the manager's the only man who could make him surprise people by picking him, and I think he's signalling that he's absolutely ready to. So it's yeah, really exciting. And I don't, Bassie's not going to be discarded. It's just going to make him better and better and better because if he's got to go away and work really hard on certain parts of his game and improve himself as a player, that's going to we're going to reap the benefit of that. So I'm very very happy. I think that's a very healthy situation that's brewing there. Like you say, Diop's a different guy. Diop he's never going to challenge for Anderson's abilities. He doesn't have. He's not. Doesn't have the. He's not the same kind of athlete for one. Doesn't have the skill that had to be developed at about 14, and he just doesn't have the same attributes. It's the athleticism of Anderson and his skill level, and I guess also, the the head, isn't it?
But if you're holding on to a lead, Diop's a fantastic player to bring on because you get good defending with him. He'll find Rosed. That's his bread and butter. So definitely someone worth keeping around. But yeah,
100%.
just from the get go is not the one.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, I agree. Next signing, the star boy, as I called him in our transfer wrap up, Smith Rowe, record transfer for Fulham. Sammy, I'll throw to you first because you love your superheroes. Smith Rowe, how good has he looked so far?
He's looked good. I want him I feel that there is a tier above. I've been optimistic. I bought Smith Rowe on the back of my shirt. So I'm hoping that this is going to be a season that we look back on as, I mean, this is going to be famous last week. He's going to get injured next week with what I'm saying right now. But I'm hoping that this is going to be a season that we look back on and go, this is where Smith Rowe became the guy again and silenced everyone and really proved everybody wrong. And I still, obviously, he scored a goal in the first game of Prem. That was awesome. I want that for him. I want to see as much of that as physically possible. I do think there is a level above when we get to proper baller like ESR. Still yet to see that, but I'm optimistic that it's going to come. But I mean, for us, awesome signing. Great piece of work. It's one of the few times I'll give Tony props.
Dad, Smith Rowe?
Yeah, I really like him. I think we've already seen his capability and its next level.
Yeah.
He's definitely a step above in terms of forward play. Obviously, Willian could have played ball with him, but really, I think he's probably the most skillful and classy forward we've got and have had for a while. No, I think he's exciting. It doesn't seem to be any. I think his fitness his fitness issues are not kind of hangovers from injuries. Just hasn't played enough football, and so one expects that that's going to come out in the wash. I think he's probably getting pretty close to it. In a couple of weeks' time, he should be there, I'd say.
Yeah.
But yeah, he looks really, really good. He's probably, I think, just as Skibby mentioned, when we get our backline sorted out and someone like Sander Berger is established in defensive midfield, I think that's going to enable Pereira. And I think that when we get our wingers and our central midfielders sorted out, it's going to really enable ESR as well. So I think he's out there at the moment having to do it on his own and actually get the ball and probably do quite a lot with it. But I think if we can put the other pieces of the puzzle together, we'll get the best out of this guy.
Skibby?
Yeah, I mean, 30 odd million, you're expecting big things, and I think early signs are he's showing us those big things. The goal against Leicester was something I hadn't seen from an attacking centre mid at Fulham in a long time, which was he actually beat a defender. He just breezed past him, smashed it left footed, done. I mean, there was a dynamic that I enjoyed in that game where we went with sort of a flat front four behind Muniz, which, you had Pereira and Smith Rowe just either side of him. I think that was exciting. That could be something that we see a bit more of. But yeah, he allows us to sort of bring that to our game. He is quick feet, decent pace, just very technically gifted, really. It's almost like, the technicality of Willian, probably not that high, but with a bit of pace about him and a bit of youth about him. So it's an exciting one. I think we're going to be depending on him quite a lot. So the sooner he gets up to speed, I think we'll start seeing the rewards. Not much else to say other than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
right.
I fully agree. Once he gets fit, I think we're going to get the best out of him.
I'm glad you made that point, Skibby. He's got very quick feet, but he's also got incredible vision. And he's one of those guys, a bit like Willian, who has got three moves in him as a couple of 2 or 3 options when the ball is coming towards him, and he just delivers it so quickly. And there aren't enough of those kind of moves and enough of those sort of players in our team. Can't get enough of it.
Yeah, for sure. Second last one here, Reece Nelson, deadline day transfer on loan from Arsenal. Skibby, I'll throw it to you first on this one. Are we excited about this, or do you think this was just sort of plugging a gap more than anything?
Plugging a gap. I think it was clear to everyone that, the lad from Lyon was probably our first option. I mean, there was 2 in the frame, but we offered a contract to Cherky. Didn't want to know. Then we started looking at, I want to say, Nuama. He fell through. We don't know why. We got the Fabrizio, here we go. So what happened? Literally 20 minutes later, it all fell to pieces. His profile looked good on a permanent as well. So that was almost, I would say a better signing. But, that didn't work out. Reece Nelson was on the brink of going to Ipswich on loan and then suddenly changed right at the last. So it was clear that we had sounded him out. It was clear that we were his preferred, which actually makes me feel a bit better about it. But, bit part player for Arsenal last season. I think even this season he's made a substitute appearance. So he's not coming in completely, unfresh, if that's the term, like Smith Rowe. So he's been there or thereabouts it. But I think there is something about him. I think it's a shame we haven't got any option or to sort of purchase him towards the end. So it is almost like the Broja deal. We're investing our time into him, bringing up his value so Arsenal can profit much more in the summer if he has a good season. But hey, we need a winger, especially with the outgoings that we've had. I think he'll fit the bill just right.
Yeah, look, I'm excited to see what he can bring. I'm not expecting a huge amount, but he's been a decent player for Arsenal for a number of years now. He's obviously a bit part player, but he can score goals. He can create as well. So I think there's some excitement there. Dad, your thoughts on Reece Nelson signing?
Well, as I said, full disclosure, I don't know that much about him. It has to be said, we've had to settle here because we were clearly trying to sign a permanent winger. So that's kind of disappointing. But if he can do a job and actually give us some potency on the left wing, if that's where he ends up playing, then look, if he contributes and makes us more complete, then that's okay. It probably gives us a job spec for who we're going to recruit in the summer, or perhaps even we probably won't recruit in January for him, but or to replace him, I mean. But if he works out on the left, for example, and he goes back and there isn't an option to buy him, at least we'll know exactly what we need, and maybe that's the thinking. But yeah, look, he's obviously if he's on the even on the fringes of Arsenal and he's made some contributions, despite what Fulham fans might want to hear, he's definitely good enough for us.
Yeah, Sammy. I mean, you've already said you don't care about him. So dare I even ask?
Well, I don't care yet, but I might care in a couple of weeks if he gives me something to care about.
You will.
Don't fall in love with a lone player until 4 years later. That's fine.
Exactly. So it's like, why am I getting my hopes up for what is Nelson bringing to me? Until he brings something to me that gives me something to care about, then I'll care.
Well, how about we talk about someone who I'm sure you do care about, Ryan Sessegnon. Now, we've already seen he got left out of the squad on the weekend, which is a bit of a statement, to be honest. How do we feel, though, in general about Sessegnon returning to Fulham?
I mean, I almost don't like how much I do care about this one because I actually care about this boy a lot, and it's not it's not got off to like the best start. I mean, look, he's better with us than he is at Spurs, and there is every possibility that he can grow and become something great. At this stage, it's not really happening, nor do I really see it happening at this current climate. But again, he's safer with us, and he is still young. He's still young-ish. I don't know.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a
Well,
bit of a
no,
fun, isn't it?
look, I think the hype has unfortunately kind of fizzled out a bit, hasn't it?
Mm,
Because I think everyone loves the idea of him coming back, and I do as well. But I just hope that he's got the sensibility to realize that if he goes away, listens to what Silver wants from him, works on it, and maybe improves a few elements of his game, that he can still have a very, very good career. Like you say, he's
mm,
young, and whilst he's nowhere near playing Robinson off the park at the moment, it doesn't mean he can't in time make a contribution for us.
Yeah, look, I mean, it seems at the moment he's a squad player, and that's fine. In the same stead that Harrison Reed, Tom Caney, Harry Wilson at the moment are all squad players. Skibby, do you think there's a likelihood of him being more than that, or do you think he's probably resigned to that for the rest of the season?
He's resigned to that for the rest of the season. I think for him running down his contract at Spurs, um, been on loan where it hasn't worked out. He just needs stability, an arm around him, and just someone to pick him back up again. I think Marco was spot on, sort of hinting at it in his interview, which was, you know, they just want to get Ryan enjoying his football again. And that says to me that we've picked up someone who is not flourishing with confidence. He's
mm,
had a bit of a rough time with injuries, therefore, he just wants to get him back to a position where not particularly his best and he's our star boy again, but even just to a point where Ryan's actually enjoying his career again. So the term to me that's sort of coming to my head, which is not a very good, nice one that Ryan probably doesn't want to hear, but it's a bit like a charity case. He's coming back to a place which he knows is safe. He's coming to be surrounded with staff, backroom staff. Not saying that Marco's coaching staff, but Mark Morders. He's coming back to a familiar home where people know him and love him. So hopefully that's something that will give him a bit of a confidence boost straight away. But it's going to take time for him to get up to speed. I can't see him becoming a starter unless something dramatically happens to Robinson. Touch wood, that doesn't happen. But destined to be a squad player. But hey, I'm happy he's back. It's a shame how it's worked out, but here we are.
Yeah,
I don't. Maybe you guys can shed some light on this. I don't know really that much about Sessegnon the man or the. So yeah, he's a man. He's not a boy anymore. But when people talk about guys like Tim Ream, he's a ultra professional. Obviously, works really hard on his fitness. Isn't devastated by low patches in his career. Just he's obviously got a very, very good head on his shoulders and is not easily beaten. And I wonder if that is Ryan Sessegnon, because if it is, this could really work out for him if if it provided Robinson doesn't break down and he's suddenly thrown in, having to do a job when he's far, far from it. If he's really given a few months, maybe even 6 months till 2025 before he's actually needed on a semi-consistent basis. Is he that player? Is he that kind of professional? I don't know.
Well, I'll be honest. I don't think he is, but I think he's not that yet. I think he's. I mean, because I don't even know if Ream was that when we first got him. I don't know if. Yeah, it's really really hard to say. He seems like I don't know. I know this is patronizing, and I don't mean it to be, but he does seem like a nice, genuine kid. And I think he does have a lot of natural talent. I'm still not even 100% sure he's even playing in his right position. So I think there does need to be some nurturing there. But yeah, as we're all kind of saying, he's in the best place to be nurtured. So maybe he might develop some more tenacity. Maybe he might develop a bit more of a fire. And I think his time at Spurs, any fire that he potentially had got really beaten out of him. So hopefully he can get back to what he was doing in the Championship and just kind of recapture that, because it's in him. There's something there because we've seen it. So he just needs to find it again.
Yeah. And just to add to that, he is in a place where the fans are going to sing his name no matter what.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think everyone wants him to do well. And when you come into a situation like that where it's very different from coming in and having to prove yourself, he's given Fulham fans a lot through our history. So I think they'll always back him. And I think that's huge for a player who's maybe still trying to get back to the levels that he was at before. And look, he has matured. You can tell from the interviews from when he first re-signed with the club. He's a different guy than the kid who left for Spurs 5-6 years ago, whenever it was. And I think he'll grow into himself even more at Fulham, because it's a nurturing place. It's a place where he will feel comfortable. I think he's got a nephew maybe at the club in the youth teams as well. So his family's around the club still. And you can tell he loves Fulham. And I think it was too good an opportunity to turn down when he did go to Spurs. And now he's back. It does feel like he's back home. It's as he said in the interview. Guys, I think we'll probably wrap it up there. And what we might do is actually, during the international break, get back together again and talk about the outgoing transfers, because there is a fair bit to talk about there. But I'm wary of running massively over time. We could go deep into the next day for Sam over in Melbourne. So let's finish it up there. Dad, thanks for joining tonight.
Thank you. Look forward to the weekend. Oh, actually, no. I can't look forward to the weekend. There is no weekend. Okay, I'll just sit quietly for a couple of weeks then.
Sammy, thank you for joining.
Thank you very much for having me. And also a belated Happy Father's Day. I haven't actually been able to wish you both not in person, in virtual, a Happy Father's Day. But yeah. Happy tidings all around, and I will call you tomorrow, Dad, to do a proper one.
Only a day late, but that's all right.
No, I'm not. Oh, different podcast.
All good. And Skibby, well done. You made it through. And for you, we made it an extra long podcast as well, sitting in your underpants. Congratulations.
Yeah, just carried on. I was just like, yeah, this isn't remotely. To be honest, I got more and more comfortable as it went on, so I think I might do this more often. But yeah, it's a shame we didn't get to sort of mention about Stano. But yeah, thanks to that absolute unbelievable transfer, here I am, just in my pants. So thank you, Stano.
Let's be honest, he can't turn that down. £20 million for a bloke who's got one league appearance in the Premier League.
45k a week for 7 years. Enjoy it.
Well, watch Birmingham crash and fall at some point when that all comes crashing down. But well done, Skibby. You made it through. Well done for keeping the camera very tight to your chin as well. We all appreciate that. Thanks to everyone who's joined in on the live stream. Thanks to everyone who supports. As always, please do join the Discord. Check out the website. Continue to share the podcast with people. You can catch us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And enjoy the international break where there's no Fulham. Take a breather. And as always, come on, you Whites.